Hello, thank you for tuning into the Natural Health Rising podcast. My name is Rachel Smith. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and I've helped hundreds of people naturally reverse symptoms of autoimmune diseases and other health challenges, from digestive issues to hormone imbalances. And in these weekly episodes, you're going to learn from myself and top health experts from around the world about functional medicine and holistic health tips to help you rise to your healthiest, happiest self. Welcome to today's episode where we dive deep into the world of personal empowerment and the journey to living a life free of people pleasing. My special guest today is Dr. Kyle Dean Freeman, who is a sex and empowerment coach and a licensed physiotherapist. He is a world traveler, a lifelong learner, and owner of the Empower Me Academy online community, where his mission is to help humans around the world undo fear based programming, develop healthy habits, and speak their truth so that they can stop people pleasing and live confident, fulfilling lives, both in and out of the bedroom. In today's episode, we're going to uncover the signs of people pleasing tendencies, things like constantly apologizing and ignoring your own needs to always accommodate for other people, and understanding how these behaviors are often rooted in trauma and fear. We'll dive into the toll that these behaviors take on our mental, emotional, and physical health, and how they wind up leading to things like exhaustion and nervous system dysregulation, and even other diseases. Kyle shares some initial steps for you to take in order to start to rewire your mind and your habits to break free from people pleasing tendencies, and how to create healthy boundaries, which will lead to becoming your authentic self, gaining more self respect and respect from others, improving your health, and really developing the life you desire, surrounded by people who love you. You'll also hear some bonus tips on creating a healthy nervous system and how to move yourself from emotional reaction to mindful response so that you're able to regain power over your life. I personally found this conversation very empowering, very inspiring. And so, whether you're looking to break free from people pleasing, whether you're looking to set healthy boundaries, or simply take your personal growth to the next level, this episode is for you. So, let's jump in. All right. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, Rachel. It's a pleasure to be here.
I want to dive right into things today and get deep. I want to know, how do you identify a people pleaser? What are some common things that they say or do?
Yeah, so a people pleaser, well, just from a background of what makes a people pleaser, it's a conditioned trauma response at the simplest definition. And
Mm,
it's someone who constantly puts others' needs before their own, not out of their goodwill, but mostly due to fear. That we often consider ourselves good people, we're nice people, but a lot of the way in which we act is because we are fearful of something. We are fearful of conflict, abuse, negative consequences, criticism, shame, judgment, all the things. And so we please people to avoid a lot of those possible consequences.
hmm Okay. Um, could you give a couple examples of some things that you see commonly with people and where this shows up in their life?
Yeah, so I think it comes back. I think we need to come back to where this all starts to fully understand why someone acts this way.
Okay.
And so most of the patterns that I see amongst people are growing up, they had a relationship with their parents or someone else in their life, maybe in school, where they tried to be their authentic selves. They were a kid. They weren't conditioned into a robot yet, like society is nowadays. And they acted authentically. Maybe they asked for help, and it was received in an unloving way, maybe with judgment, criticism, shame, all those things that I said prior. And it made that individual, that kid, feel unloved, unwanted,
Mm,
rejected. Maybe even in some cases, a parent left, so they felt abandoned. And so this led that kid, that inner child in you, if you're listening, to feel like, okay, I can't act this way because it doesn't get received in a loving manner. So what do I need to do to receive love? And so we begin to act in a way to please people. And we start, instead of thinking about ourselves and what we actually want, we start becoming attuned to the external environment. How is mom feeling today? How's dad feeling today? How is my coach or my teacher or my friend group? And how do I need to act to keep them happy and to fit in and to belong and to be loved and all those things? Because I don't want that sensation, that feeling again of being rejected, abandoned, and unloved. And I'll just do whatever it takes to avoid that feeling again. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what leads into the people pleaser, is that it's usually from childhood. In some cases, it's from an abusive or just unhealthy relationship. It could be romantic or platonic that leads to this, but it all is a form of fear-based trauma. In the worst cases, we see abuse, domestic, physical, sexual, that leads to a lot of this. And it becomes ingrained in our nervous system. It becomes this unconscious nervous system response where we begin acting in this certain way. For example, apologizing for everything without even knowing that we're making these comments of sorry all day long because it's become so natural to us. And so a lot of this is becoming aware of these unconscious patterns so that we can change them and also just heal the part of you that feels unloved and holds those wounds.
Mm. Okay, that is such a good description of all that, and we'll get deeper into that stuff. But I believe you have a personal story of kind of going from more of being a people pleaser to taking back your power, gaining confidence, having boundaries. You have this wonderful dream life now. So I would love for you to share with other people what a little bit of where that came from and what that transformation looked like for you.
Yeah, so obviously most of us, our mess is our message. And the reason I'm a coach for people pleasers and those with fear-based trauma is because I experienced that in my life. I had a good upbringing. I will say that straight out. You know, I grew up in a safe town, always had food and shelter, but not everything was perfect. My father was very emotionally abusive. He just had anger issues. He didn't have a great relationship with my mother. And as a result, it led to my mother being more controlling. She came from a very survival, fear-based background in her childhood. So they both had their own trauma that they never healed. And then they came together and ended up butting heads. And it led to, usually in most cases, the children dealing with the brunt of that issue. So my dad not having the emotional capacity to really speak to me in the best ways or speak to my mom or my brother. And it led me to feel fearful. And then my mother, since she didn't feel that my dad was much of a leader and she felt unsafe based on his actions, she became the controlling one, trying to keep everything okay. And so
Hmm.
everything had to be her way. And so when I would get gifts for her, it was always rejected because there was money issues. Why did you get that? I don't need that. Oh, okay, fine. She had this very feeling of undeserving in her life, which she didn't recognize how much she was projecting this onto me and making me feel like, oh, nothing I ever do is good enough. My dad, I never feel safe to go to because I'm afraid of rejection and getting screamed at or possibly worse. And so what happens to a boy like me? Well, I just shut down. I close off. Nothing I ever say or do is good enough. And so why open up? Why talk to you?
Mm.
And that's what happened, like many men experience when they're younger. And so they start internalizing everything, repressing all their emotions. And also, I didn't see the best model of what it was to handle your emotions. And so when I did have a moment where I can't take this anymore, I did have anger issues. Fortunately, I grew up playing the drums. And so I was able to smash the drums growing up and get my anger out in a healthy way, which is great.
Hmm.
Um, that's something that not every kid has. So I was grateful that I had that at least. Moving forward into college, I wanted to feel loved. I felt like I didn't receive love in the way I needed it from my mom and my dad. They didn't understand me. They always tried to tell me to do certain things. I was never understood. And once I started dating, after one traumatic breakup, went into my hoe phase and said, screw relationships. I'm going to do
Mhm.
my thing. I'm going to have fun. I'm in college. And then I realized that a lot of women liked me. They thought I was cute. They wanted to have sex with me. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And I started to associate love with sex, which
Mhm.
isn't the same thing. And that led to problems. That led to me hurting myself. That led to me hurting others because I thought, oh, if I tell them the truth about what I want, or I actually don't even know what I want, then they're going to leave. They're not going to love me. And I'm going to feel like a piece of crap again, just another unloved version of myself from the past. So, again, doing everything I can to not trigger that, which included manipulation, which included lying, which included hiding the truth. Not because I wanted to do that, I wanted to be truthful, but I just knew if I open up, they're going to hate me, they're going to yell at me, they're going to leave me, and I'm just going to
Mm.
feel unloved and not good enough. And it took years of screwing up, getting hurt, hurting others, and finally graduating where I could not just focus on my professional development, but my personal development and recognize, okay, I thought money would start to solve it now that I'm making money as a physiotherapist, but it's not. I still have the same relationship problems and I'm still struggling to authentically express myself and also maybe not attracting always the best relationships. And that's when I began, quote unquote, doing the work. And over the next couple of years of doing therapy, working with coaches, all the things, I started to recognize that, oh, I can express myself authentically. And I had a coach who did see me and did see the sexual side of me that wanted to express itself, that wanted to be a sexual being without the shame or the guilt of that. But in
Mhm.
society, it made me feel like I couldn't be that person. Um, and once I started to learn about ethical non-monogamy, I started to realize, oh, I can be upfront with people from the start about my intentions, and this is truly what I want. And once I started doing that, there was less arguments, there was less hurt, there was less pain, and there was more understanding. I wasn't wasting people's time, they weren't wasting mine. There wasn't any exchange of energy that didn't need to be had. And I
Mhm.
was more attracting the right relationships because I was authentically expressing what I wanted and who I was. And most people, even if they don't want that, they're at least happy that you were honest with them. And they say, you know what, that's not for me, but good luck. Or the ones who do or are interested, they start to ask questions. And now it was just relieving for me because it was finally a moment where I said, wow, I can be seen for who I am. And I'm attracting people who actually want that. And those who don't, it's okay. I want them to be happy. I want them to go find what's best for them. It's okay for me to get rejected because it's just a sign that that's not the relationship that I want or that's best for me or
Mm.
that person. And so over the next couple years, I really got into that, dug into that in my personal life as well as my professional life as I started to share more about it and what I was learning, doing work in the field of sacred sexuality with ISTA and the International School of Temple Arts and other studies. And now I'm here today where I help others do the same to overcome their fear-based trauma and stop living from a place of fear and start living from a place of love where you are authentically yourself, that you accept yourself for who you are, and you live a life in alignment and recognize that if someone's not okay with that, that's okay. Let them go find what they want in their life.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. There's pieces of your story that I even relate to, growing up and things. So I'm sure a lot of other people out there can relate to that as well. Um, there's so many things I want to ask, but I think a good place to start is if someone's listening and they're like, "Oh my gosh, okay, I'm a people pleaser. This is making sense. I've also, came up with some of these problems. I don't feel like I can authentically express myself." And I do feel that fear. What is, I'm obviously this could take months to years or however long to unravel all this, but like where does somebody really start? Or do you have a few tips where people can start to take baby steps to like transform this behavior?
Yeah. So I think it's best to start this response with some statistics, actually, because for starters, let's be real. It's a good thing to care for people. It's a good thing to
Mhm.
want to help people. It's not a bad thing to want to make people happy. Okay. I being in healthcare, I've seen it with so many healthcare workers who are empaths per se, and they enjoy helping people. That's completely fine. That's not what we're shaming here. What we are pointing out with people pleasing behaviors is the point to where we are going so far and extending our help and our giving and our love to the point where we are leaving our battery on zero, where we are
Mhm.
giving away our money, we are giving away our food, our time, our energy, all because we cannot say no. We struggle to create healthy boundaries and we fear confrontation. And then we end up in a place where we're exhausted. We feel like no one cares about us. So we get bitter and resentful of other people. And maybe we even take it out on those people. And then we wonder why we are living this life that isn't fulfilling. And we have to recognize, how am I responsible? How am I playing into my own problems? That yes, the things that may have happened to you in the past, the trauma, the abuse, whatever you've experienced is valid. It's real. However, if you aren't healing this part of you and you are playing into it, then you are not helping yourself and you're playing into your own suffering. And so we have to begin with taking responsibility for this. Because if we just want to complain and say no one cares about us, well, then you're not actually taking agency over your life. Okay. A big part of what I do is allow and encourage people to take agency in their life and put the finger at themselves. That no matter what's
Mhm.
happened to you, it doesn't matter. It's a matter of what you do today. That you can blame the world or you can take power over what you have power over and make change. That's the difference that we see in society, with those who choose to be the victim of their story and those who choose to be the victor by saying, you know what? I'm going to make this my story. I'm going to do the work so that maybe my kids don't experience the same, so that I attract healthy relationships. Um, and so one thing I also want to point out is that if you experience a lot of these people pleasing behaviors, such as you have low self esteem, low confidence, you feel the need to be liked, you struggle to say no, you're always apologizing, you lack boundaries and let people walk all over you, you're always overgiving, you have no free time because you give it all to everyone else, and you're constantly worrying, anxious, or stressed. Those are a lot of common symptoms. Are also very hyper independent and perfectionists because when we tried asking for help, it was rejected. So we said, screw it, I guess I have to do it all myself. And then also the perfectionist in us, of we never felt good enough because we never received positive feedback or encouragement. So we always had to be perfect. Otherwise, we were never good enough. These
Mhm.
are all of the people pleasing traits, and it's a common pattern. And I want you to know, if you're listening and you're like, oh my God, a lot of this is me, or all of this is me, don't worry, because there's a YouGov poll where they asked a lot of questions about this amongst 1,000 American adults. And literally 1 in 2 adults, American, consider themselves to be people pleasers or have people pleasing behaviors. Now, women are more inclined to feel like people pleasers, about 2/3 of women. Now, this can be associated with different things. We are mostly in a male dominated society, mostly throughout history. Women have typically been in a more submissive role in life throughout history. And so we've always done things, or I shouldn't say we, I'm not a woman, but women have always done things to please their man, please their family, please their community. So, the typical feminine roles in history. And so that's where a lot of these things play in addition to abuse and all those other fear-based traumas. So we have to recognize these things and just know that, hey, you're not alone. But B, don't play into your own problems by continuing to not get help and feeling like you have to fix it all on your own and be the perfectionist and be right, because that's not actually how you heal and change this. You heal and change this by getting help. But it also starts with just So you asked, how does someone start this? Here's where we begin. A, it says, take agency over your life and point the finger at you and say, you know what? I take responsibility for my behaviors and how I've been playing into my own suffering, that I don't know how to create healthy boundaries. Maybe I just don't have the education and I need to educate myself. I need to get help and stop trying to do it all myself.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even you've tried getting help. Maybe you've tried to therapy and it helped a little bit, or it just, I don't know, it took forever to get progress, or you still haven't made the progress. Okay. That doesn't help everyone. And I see this commonly. So taking agency, and then B, recognizing that if you want to make progress in your life, no matter what you're doing, whether you have a business, whether you're trying to personally develop, whatever it might be, you can either spend your time trying to do it all on your own and struggling and failing and not having support, or you can get someone on your team to help support you through it that has been through these things to support you, give you the guide, and when you fall on your face, to help you get back up. Because I know when I was going through these problems and trying to figure it all out on my own, because that's what men feel like they have to do. Like, I can't open up to anyone. I have to do it all myself. That's
Mm.
what a man's supposed to do. But I ended up staying in the same cycle, because if I don't see a different perspective on how to live life and change my behavior, then it's hard to get out of it. It's only when you have someone looking in who's maybe been there and figured out how to overcome this that they can say, no, look at your behaviors. Let me show you what you're not seeing. Let me put up a mirror to your face because you're not even seeing what I see. I can't tell you how many times I get on a call with someone who is a people pleaser, a bona fide one, and they'll apologize for, their camera taking 2 minutes to come on, and then they'll say
Mm.
sorry for so they'll apologize multiple times on the call in the first 5 minutes. And I'll just go, I just want to pause and reflect something back to you. Do you know how many times you just said sorry to me? And they'll go, oh yeah, I do that all the time. And I go, do you know why you do that? She goes, no, it's just a habit. And I'm like, okay, well, recognize that this is a conditioned habit and it's unconscious. You're not even aware of it because you've been doing it for so long. It's like an old computer program.
Mm-hmm.
But when we apologize all the time for things, it's a sign that throughout your history as a human on this earth, you were doing that to avoid conflict, that you felt like you weren't good enough, and that you always had to apologize because you just couldn't do anything right. And it
Mm-hmm.
puts you in this weak state, not in this confident, empowered state. And so sometimes it's that simplest message to bring mindfulness to your behaviors and to your thought patterns. And that's when we begin to actually see change, is when we can pause and have someone reflect back to you on your behaviors that are playing into this cycle. And then you can go, oh, now that I'm mindful of that, now that I'm aware, I can start to change that. So the next time I go to apologize for something that doesn't deserve an apology, I can stop myself and change my wording. And instead of saying, sorry for being 5 minutes late to the call, it's thank you for your patience. Thank you
Mm.
for understanding. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of things don't require an apology, they don't require an explanation. Because many people pleasers tend to over explain things. Oh, you want to go to the beach this weekend? I can't. I'm sorry. I have so many things on the table and my kid needs to go to school and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, stop, stop, because you are putting yourself in this weak state and feeling like
Mm-hmm.
you have to justify everything that you say no to avoid the conflict, because we are so fearful of what other people's responses are going to be, when it's like, how can we actually look at boundaries from a more loving perspective? Um, and I want to pause here. I can keep going. I know I'm just rambling right now, but do you want me, is there any questions you have before I keep going?
Comments. This is good stuff. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, and you just mentioned it, is how 2/3 of women tend to, I mean, you said one in two people, but like mostly women, right, are
Hmm.
falling into this category. And then you use the word exhaustion. And I just want to highlight that because I see this all the time. Like women, I work with mostly women. I also see this in men. I work with men too, but mostly women. And it's like they get into this pattern, especially if they're a mom, where they're putting themselves last and they're falling into this, and it winds up affecting, it's like not just some of these things you mentioned, your self-confidence, etc., but like your emotional health, your mental health, your physical health. And these people wind up developing serious diseases because
Mhm.
of not feeling heard, authentically expressed, fulfilled. Um, like their just life overall isn't authentically what it could be. So I
Mhm.
just want to highlight like all this is why you're on the podcast. This is a health podcast, but this is all linked together, right? This all is linked together with everything. So it's super important to work on these things. And if you were like about to go on another tangent, go for it. But I would also love to start to get into like, how do people create healthy boundaries? Because you started
Mhm.
to mention that, and a lot of people don't have the education of like, what does a boundary even look like? And how do you state that? And where are some places that we can start to implement these in a gentle way if we're not used to doing this?
Absolutely. And it's a great point. And I know on your podcast and what you do, you talk a lot about like hormonal balance in women.
Hmm.
And if we are constantly putting on an inauthentic mask in our day to day, which is our pleaser mask to keep people happy, that is exhausting. It becomes so stressful on our nervous system to try to maintain. And it's why we become exhausted, because our body does not want to keep up this mask. That's why we have no energy, because we're getting tired of acting all day just to make other people happy. And stress plays into hormonal imbalances. As you said, it plays into diseases. And
Hmm.
we have to recognize that if we don't change these behaviors, you are a detriment to your health, and you're a detriment to the people around you, the health of the people around you. If you have kids, do you want your kid to be doing these behaviors and feel like they are always lesser than others, having to please people? Well, they're going to start doing that if they see you do that, because you're their role model. And
Hmm.
so if you do have kids, you have to recognize not only are you doing this for your own health, for your own mental health and sanity, but you're doing this for the people around you, because you're giving them permission to apologize for everything and to act in this way. And I want to add to this that as we move into talking about boundaries, and one of the other poll statistics that was discussed is that when it comes to the difference between men and women, about a third of men feel responsible for other people's feelings. But when it comes to women, it's half, or just under half,
Hmm.
about 47%. So women feel more responsible for other people's feelings. And yes, women are definitely more emotional beings. We understand that. However, we have to recognize that we are not responsible all the time for how someone reacts.
Mm.
So let's get into where we are responsible and where we are not. So, boundaries, what are boundaries? A lot of people, when we start to talk about boundaries, they get tight and they get tense because, oh my God, this means I have to say no and I have to, boundaries hard. So I usually like to use this metaphor where we're looking at, and this is a great time in history to look at this. If we look at the US Mexico border, okay, in all, throughout the world, every country has borders. And what does that do? Borders creates the outline of this sovereign nation, that we are sovereign, we are separate from everyone else. And in this country, we have certain rules, we have certain regulations, certain things that you can and cannot do. Okay. And we also have things put in place to protect our citizens and show love for our citizens. Now, if you want to come into our country, you have to show a visa, show your passport, show that you're not a terrorist, you're not allowed to bring in guns or whatever it might be, because we are here to protect our country and our citizens, right? It's a way of showing love for the people here. And that if you do come in the country, if we allow you into our boundaries, and you agreed to the terms of coming into our country, and you break those boundaries, you break those rules, there are consequences. You get arrested, you get fined, maybe you get deported. Okay. Now we have to take this reflection and look at our own lives. We are a sovereign being. We are an individual who has the ability to make decisions for our own life and take ownership over our body and the decisions that we make in our lives. Now, if we are like the Mexico border right now, where there are, regardless of what you think about immigration, where there are lots of people coming across the border without showing their documentation, coming across illegally. We don't know if they are safe. We don't know if they even know the laws and regulations. And we're just letting them into our lives, letting them into our house, letting them into our businesses. They don't even know what our boundaries are because we never created it. There is no boundary there. And so what do you think is going to happen? They're probably going to break the boundary without them even knowing it. And then you're going to get upset. Oh, someone drunk drove and they're illegal. Well, we should probably enforce that boundary and say, well, there's a consequence here. Well, if we don't enforce that consequence, then clearly people can do whatever they want and they could walk all over us and do anything they want because there's no boundary. And the few boundaries that we do have, we don't even enforce. And so I say this so that you reflect on your own life. How are you letting people into your world and letting them do whatever they want? How are you letting people into your world and letting them drain you of your time, your energy, your money? And how are you a part of the problem? How are you doing this to yourself? Because you cannot create agreements and put them in place to say, here's what we agree upon in this relationship. And if you break this agreement, we have to talk about it. This relationship ends, or something has to happen to show that, hey, I hold the line on my boundaries. It's not a way of punishing people. It's a way of showing yourself love. And that is the big key here. Boundaries are not about punishing people. Boundaries are a form of love. They are the greatest form of love, in my opinion, because it is a way of saying, well, you show respect for me, I show respect for you. So if we make this agreement, we're going to meet the terms of that agreement. And if we don't, there's a misalignment in respect. And so we need to address that. So for example, let's put it just on you, if you are listening right now, because you can have boundaries with other people. But I always say when I work with someone that you need to create healthy boundaries with yourself first. Because if you cannot hold your own boundaries, hell, you're not going to hold boundaries with anyone else. Okay. So let's say, for example, you want to start going to the gym 5 days a week so that you can lose weight, get fit, get healthy. Great, great goal, great agreement with yourself. But you know what? Tuesday comes around, it's cold outside, you don't want to get out of your bed and you don't go. And then Friday comes around and you know what? I'm only just going to go for 10 minutes and just get on the treadmill, even though I said I would go for 30 to 40 minutes every day. Now you are telling your brain and telling yourself that I can't even meet my own boundaries. I don't even respect myself. I don't even love myself because I can't even hold to my own word. So how do you think you're going to be able to hold to someone else's word? That's the problem. So we need to be able to start to withhold those boundaries with ourselves and show up for ourselves out of a sign of love and respect for what is good for us. And then when it moves into relationships with other people, if someone's trying to take up your time, if I'm a coach, let's look at me or even you, Rachel. You have boundaries with your clients. I have boundaries with my clients. I tell my clients, don't call me at 2 a.m. Okay. You can message me. I'll get back to you when I can. But if a client keeps calling me at 2, 3 a.m. to help them, that's a clear breakage of my boundaries, that's not how this relationship works. And so I will address that and say, hey, let's fix this. And if it continues, then I'm going to end that relationship because there's no respect for me or my time. And I made that clear agreement and that clear boundary, regardless of how they react to that. That is not my responsibility. I don't care about your feelings because you broke my boundary. I tried to ratify it. You continued. Consequence. That's a way of me showing love for myself. And when I create those boundaries and I say, hey, we made the agreement, don't call me at 2 a.m. And they say, you know what, I'm sorry, I totally forgot. And that gets rectified. Now they don't do it. Now there's respect that's been created because we created the boundary, we held the boundary, and it was created and discussed in a healthy, mature way. I didn't yell at them and say, why the hell are you calling me at 2 a.m? I told you. No, it's just saying, hey, I just want to remind you that One of the boundaries is that we don't do calls in the middle of the night, that we only have them scheduled. Oh, yes, you're right. I'm so sorry. I was just having an emotional breakdown. That's okay. Next time, send me a message as soon as I can. I'll respond to you. Now there's respect. Now there's love for myself. I take care of myself. They have better understanding. And I'm showing them, hey, boundaries aren't this bad thing. You can do this with someone else. And now you know what a healthy boundary feels and looks like. We often get afraid of being mean when we're creating boundaries. No, it is a sign of love and respect. Okay. And when someone cannot handle that, that is not your problem. If they cannot respect your boundary, that's when you have to say, is this someone that actually loves and supports me and respects me? Because if they can't maintain this boundary, then should they even be in my life? As much as it hurts to say, because in many cases, for many of you listening, you might not have healthy boundaries with a lot of people that you love, family members. It's usually the worst because many of them have grown up with a version of you that they remember that they can do whatever they want. They could ask for whatever they want and you'll do it because you've conditioned them and you've been conditioned. You've actually enabled people to take advantage of you because of your lack of boundaries. And so the second you start to make boundaries, whoa, what the hell is this? What do you mean you can't do that? And that's when we go back into our shell because we get triggered of this is exactly what I knew what would happen. I'm starting to make boundaries and now they're getting mad at me. And this is why I don't do this and life sucks. No, that's exactly what you should expect, that is going to happen. And that is why you get help and have someone in your corner to say, hey, you did what you needed to do. And that's what you have to start to get used to is that there's going to be rejection. There's going to be disappointment and that you cannot make everyone happy. And that's how you stop being a people pleaser is by recognizing that you are going to disappoint someone every single day. And I'll just add this last statement and then I'll shut up for a moment. But every decision you make, every single decision you make is going to disappoint someone. If I say yes to my friend to going to the movie Saturday night, well, that means I might be saying no to myself of staying in and doing self-care, or no to my mom of going out to dinner and spending time with her, right? Every yes, you're saying no to everything else. And every no means you're saying yes to something else. So when I say no to going to the movies, I'm saying maybe yes to myself, my self-care that night to stay in. And if you don't like that, that's fine, because I'm saying yes to myself so I can take care of myself. And if you are on the opposite end of someone saying no to you, you get the feeling of rejection. That's okay. Something you need to work on, but also recognize, hey, maybe that person is doing something in their best interest to take care of themselves and love themselves. And that's where we all need to come together on that level of respect and love, of where we can understand that a lot of us have different things going on and we need to do things that are in our best interest at sometimes. It has nothing to do with us. It might have everything to do with them.
Only if we could wave a magic wand and have everybody get on that exact same level. You made me think of something that I hear a lot with my clients because when they work with me, they're changing their diet a lot. A lot of them are taking out inflammatory foods, and I know you eat super healthy, and like when you go from eating a standard American diet to eating healthy foods, like people look at you a little bit weird sometimes. They're like, "What the heck are you doing?" Or you stop drinking alcohol, or you stop making choices that you used to make, and so let's say somebody's at a party or they're hanging out with their friends, but they've made this new lifestyle choice, and this person is like, oh, come on, eat the cake, eat the cake, or like drink the alcohol, what are you doing? And so they're pushing against this boundary multiple times, this new boundary. Do you have any advice for somebody of what that communication can look like?
Yeah. So one thing that comes to mind first is is you brought up identity, because
Mm,
when someone's working with you or they're working with me, you are you're going through a change in your identity. Okay. Even if you're working through a disease with Rachel or with me, with your people pleasing behaviors, I want to start off by saying this. A lot of my content, I'll say, hey, if you're a people pleaser, right? It's a way to get your attention. But I want you to know, do not identify yourself as I am a people pleaser. No, We don't want to do that. We want to say, I have people pleasing tendencies or behaviors. Because the second we start ingraining that into our brain of, I'm a people pleaser, I'm a people pleaser, no, that's what makes it even harder to get out of. The same thing goes with addictions or attaching ourselves to our traumas. I'm a sexual abuse survivor or whatever it might be. We don't want to attach ourselves to these things because it makes it harder to get away from. So, as we are trying to change, let's say we're at that party and we're trying to stop drinking alcohol because we're making these healthy changes. This is where you just simply identify as someone who doesn't drink alcohol anymore. That's the
Mhm.
change. It is a shift in your perspective and your thought process of yourself. It is not a, oh, I'm just not drinking anymore. It's no, I am someone who does not drink. I identify as someone who doesn't drink. Now, when you do that and you go around the same people maybe that you used to drink around, well, there's going to be the possibility that some of them go, what do you mean? What's your problem now?
Mhm.
And you go, I don't drink anymore. I'm taking care of my health. And I hope you can support me in that. And when you start to create these boundaries and start to change your identity, you have to accept the fact that people might drop off out of your life. And you might be the one who has to cut them off. Now, this is not always. You might say that to someone and they say, you know what? I'm support you in that. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. We can go do other things where drinking's not involved. I'm so happy to support you. That's someone you want to keep in your life. Amazing. Okay.
Mhm.
The person who's saying, oh, calling you out, I think of the guys, what are you being a pussy or whatever? You don't drink anymore. What are you not cool?
Mhm.
That's when you start to recognize, do they actually love me or do they love a version of me that they felt comfortable around? And if that version of you is not there anymore, well, they're going to be very uncomfortable. And we have to recognize that it's not about you when they say those things, it's about them, that they are projecting likely their own insecurity or feeling that, oh, I can never live a life like that where I don't drink. And so I'm going to try and bring you back down to my level. And you have to recognize that that might be an opportunity to say, I have to evolve from this life I'm in. I have to evolve from this friend group I'm in. If I want to actually make this change sustainable, I can't have people around me who are constantly shaming me and judging me for trying to do the opposite thing and try to get better. They will drag you down. That is the hardest part about this, is that you are shifting, you are evolving yourself into a higher version of you to take care of you. And if someone cannot respect you trying to take care of yourself, do they really love you?
Mhm.
And that is where you stop caring about feeling guilty. You stop caring about someone's reactions to your no, because you're shifting away from them feeling upset to, they actually don't care about me in this moment. They do not love me and support me for the changes I'm trying to make. Should I even keep this person in my life? Do they deserve to be in my life? Because you know what? I want someone who's going to love me regardless of my decisions, or at least support me in healthy ones. And if they can't do that, then maybe it's time I move on. And that's where you take power of your life. That is the shift. And yes, it might be scary when you first start doing this thing, but this is the thing that I'm really getting deep into in my work and with my clients is the term rage.
Mhm.
And rage, we often associate with anger. But anger is a secondary emotion to fear. Most people who get
Mhm.
angry is a result of fear. Okay, they get fearful of something, so they get defensive and angry to try and push people away or fight. Rage is different. Rage is a secondary emotion to love. When you see a lion and her cub is out there and hyenas are coming after the cub, trying to attack it and eat it, that lioness will do everything to fight for her cub, to keep her safe, protect her, and fight off the hyenas, even if it leads to her dying. Not out of fear, but out of love, out of the deepest form of love for her cub. So she rages for her cub. And that means taking her claws out, taking her teeth out, and doing whatever is necessary to protect what she loves. And so I'm not saying that you have to take your claws out all the time, but I'm saying that you do have to assert yourself and stand up for yourself and saying, I love myself so much that I will rage for myself. And if that means me being assertive and being firm with my boundaries and saying no and saying, you know what, maybe you do not deserve to be in my life. That is what you need to do to show love for yourself and the people in your life, is to rage for you and rage for what you care about and rage for yourself.
Mm, that's so good. Mic drop. Um, as we wrap up this episode, I want to touch a little bit on the nervous system and emotional regulation, because you've mentioned quite a few different emotions, fear and anger, and also how not having boundaries and people pleasing tendencies can create an imbalanced nervous system. So, talk to us about this. And if you have some, there's so many ways to tackle this, but are there some tips on how to start to regulate emotions and the nervous system that you like?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it comes back to recognizing, okay, if you are in the beginning stage of healing these people-pleasing behaviors and changing your identity, we have to recognize that a lot of our behaviors, our pleasing tendencies, get triggered in situations where we might feel unsafe, where we might feel a trigger that's triggering something from the past that go, oh no, someone's going to get mad at me, someone's going to yell at me, I'm going to disappoint them. We have to become mindful of that moment to say, okay, here it is. This is the trigger that's been ingrained in my nervous system, embodied in my body. And stop thinking about everyone else for a moment and come back to you. You have to stop tuning into everyone else and start beginning by tuning into you and how you are feeling and noting the reactions physically that you are having and how that is what plays into the physical behaviors. And so we have to begin to regulate that so that we do not become emotionally reactive to life and instead we respond to life. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we are emotionally reactive to life, we are not in control of our life. When we respond to life moment by moment through mindful action, then we have power over our life. We are not letting people's words or actions to control how we act. That is in some ways you could think of the guy who gets made fun of and he gets so angry that he beats someone up and ends up in jail. We don't want that. Okay, we want to be able to respond to life. So how we do that is through emotional regulation and nervous system regulation. And the simplest way to begin with that is to just tapping into your breath for a moment. Okay, because many of us, we tend to get tense, we tend to guard when we're getting stressed, when our fight or flight response is being triggered in these moments. And then we also might get a shortness of breath. We stop breathing deep. That plays into our higher heart rate, higher blood pressure, and all leads into the spiral of these behaviors. And I need to do anything to get out of here. And I'll please you. I'll do whatever you want. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where we see this often in very stressful situations, sexual situations where, you know what, just do whatever you want so this can be done with and I can get out of here. That's not what we want. That's what leads to bad things happening in your life. Okay. So we have to pause and say, okay, come back to me. Let me take some deep breaths in through the nose. Let me relax my shoulders. Let me try to calm myself down, take some deep breaths, start to allow my nervous system to calm down. And then I can start to begin to think more clearly about how I want to respond. Because if you are in a heightened state, an emotional state, a stressed or anxious state, you are not going to think clearly. You're not getting enough oxygen to your brain because now you're short of breath. And you are going to be, I always think of the girl or the guy in the horror movie making the worst decisions in the world, running into the room full of knives for some stupid reason, because we're not thinking clearly. We're not giving ourselves the chance to actually get in touch with what do I actually want and what do I actually need to do here that's in my best interests. And instead, we're just responding emotionally and reactively. And so that's the first thing that I would recommend you is practicing mindfulness of these moments in your day to day of, okay, what are my unconscious behavioral patterns? Maybe I can write them down. And
Mm-hmm.
then every time they come up, such as saying sorry a million times a day. Every time you say it, recognize it, pause, change your language when you do it. And that's how you begin to change the pattern. Or I'm getting stressed. I feel myself tensing up. Okay. I'm feeling triggered in this moment. What can I do to change this? How can I regulate myself before I start to respond, before I go and have this conversation with someone? Pause. You know what? I'm feeling very stressed and anxious and I don't want to be emotionally reactive here. I need a moment to go regulate before I respond to you.
Mm,
Just give me 5 minutes, at least 5 minutes. Okay, great. Now I can go do my breathing, deep breaths. Maybe you can also do so. There's all different ways to emotionally regulate, but this is the first way, especially in moment to moment. There's exercise, there's dancing, there's screaming at the top of your lungs. There's so many things you can do, but at the minimum, it's just coming back to your breath, reducing your nervous system response, and then saying, okay, what is in my best interests in this moment? That's
hmm.
what you can do.
I'm glad you mentioned the ability to say that you need to pause, right? Say that, you can walk away to go to the bathroom for a couple minutes or step outside or step into a different room because if your tendency is to emotionally react, then that pause and removing yourself before you do something detrimental, maybe to yourself or the other person, can be life-saving in that moment in a sense where you can
Mhm.
really gain control and then choose to respond how you would like to respond versus, like you said, reacting and not having that control. So I think that's a good nugget for people to start to try and implement if they're not used to doing that.
Yeah, and it's just also an opportunity for understanding that
Hmm.
if we want to ensure as best as possible that we can reduce conflict in our life, because no one wants conflict. We don't want to have conflict. Most people don't want it, but we just don't know. We get in our heads and think if I do this, it's going to create conflict. But if we can create understanding with someone, say, I'm not going to just walk out of the room because that might actually piss that person off and go, what the hell? Why did you just
Mm.
walk out on me? Like
Hmm.
that's disrespectful. And
Yeah.
now your behaviors are playing into the conflict that you're not helping yourself and you're furthering the spiral. But instead saying, you know what? Let me tell you, I need time for myself to regulate so that I can come back and give you a proper response. Now that person goes, oh, okay. I can understand that. Thank you for letting me know and letting me know how I can support you. And now there's a better understanding. And then you can come back to that conversation, for example, with understanding that I didn't just walk out on you. I just had to take care of myself because I was feeling incredibly stressed. And so that is taking power over the situation as best as you can through your actions. This
Yeah.
is why all of this plays into one another.
A lot of times that response from the other person isn't as scary or may not be scary at all as you think. I know personally myself, I used to have that problem where I would just, well, let me just shut down and not say anything because they might yell at me if I tell them how I'm feeling or something because that's how I was conditioned. And so when you start to uncondition that and just, speak up and speak your mind and communicate, you can be very surprised at the responses from people who love you and who you have good relationships with. So, yeah. I want to finish off with a quick speed round. Are you open to that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of it's super random, so what?
I held back my joke, but we're good.
Okay. I'm so curious. All right. What is one supplement you can't live without?
Creatine.
That's a good one. What is your favorite thing to do for stress reduction?
Right now, cold plunging. Absolutely. Cold plunging, cold showers for sure.
Okay. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Intelligence.
You are intelligent.
What like if you could put like artificial intelligence in my brain and I knew everything.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
Then you can figure out anything and do anything and make all the money you want because you know how to do
Mm,
it.
I love that. What is the best purchase you've made in the last year that cost you less than $100?
Trying to think. What have I been carrying around that I use like every day? Um, oh God,
Maybe it's creatine.
it could be. I mean, supplements are super crucial. I love my yerba mate cup. That sounds so ridiculous, but yerba mate is so great.
Hmm.
We could talk about the hormonal effects and stuff, but it's so yeah, I love my cup. I love my little yerba mate cup for drinking. So
Okay,
that was
cool.
like, I don't know, $12.
Uh-huh. Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, if you could leave the listeners with one tip that they could implement this week to help them live a healthier, happier life, what would that be?
I would say, as I'm sitting here looking out at the mountains in Guatemala, to get outside more and get off your phone.
Mm,
Um, Detach from all of the external disturbances and begin to reconnect with you. There are so many things taking us away from ourselves. And this is what plays into a lot of these pleasing behaviors, coping mechanisms, dopamine hits. Disconnect from everything, from everyone, get outside and reconnect with yourself. Because if you want to make changes in your life, and maybe you're listening to this podcast and you want to change your pleasing behaviors, well, you need to begin to align with you and reconnect with you and start to understand, what do you actually want, instead of living life to please what everyone else wants from you. So disconnect and get outside. Even if it's cold. I'm in Guatemala, so it's super warm here. But I understand if you're in like Minnesota listening, it's maybe a little tough, but put on a jacket.
yeah, it's just an excuse in my mind. I was in Bulgaria a few months ago and it's a weird story, but I accidentally wound up there. I know that sounds weird, but I had summer clothes with me and it was so cold and I was in a mountain town. And for me, sleep is super important. And so waking up, going outside, getting sunshine in the morning, grounding. I mean, the ground was like freezing and I had a tank top on and shorts. And I'm like, but I have to go outside. Like, I know I should go outside to get sunlight to my eyes for my hormones and my
Mhm.
sleep. And I was like, it's freezing, but I'm going to go out there anyway. So yeah, put on a jacket and go outside. It's not a big
Yeah,
deal.
and recognize it's an opportunity to improve your stress response to the cold. And
Hmm.
find the good in everything.
Absolutely. Okay, so any final words and where can people find you if they want to connect?
Final words. If you've made it this far listening to this podcast, I love you and I'm proud of you for taking this time to do the work to educate yourself and empower yourself to live a healthier, happier, more empowered life, because a lot of people out there are not doing it. And that's why the average American is obese, unhappy, in debt, and lots of other things. So you are doing what is necessary by listening to this podcast to not be that, which is great. Don't be
Mhm.
average. To find me, I'm at Dr. Kyle Dean on just about all platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Those are the best places to find and where I hang out. And if you have any questions or you want to learn more about what I do, feel free to send me a DM. I'm always open to chat and see how I could help.
Awesome. And then we have those links. And I also have like a people pleaser training and a worksheet and some other freebies in the links in the show notes so people can go grab those. So thank you so much for being on the show. This was awesome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video and comment, letting me know what you enjoyed and what you want to see more of. Also, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get alerts when new content is coming out and you don't miss any videos. And just a quick reminder that this information is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness or medical condition. Please consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise routine, supplements, or medical treatment. If you're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, please reach out to me. And thank you again for watching, and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.